Hello, everyone. It's good to finally be here. I've watched a lot of talks from the sitting area, and today I'm on stage. I've been coming to Cape Town for quite a while for these events, and I'm hoping that I could give something back, because you guys have given me a lot to work with. So my presentation is going to be tech art in startups, and we're going to look at how a technical artist experiences and goes through the environment in South Africa, for example, where the industry is not as mature, and what ways they can take to sort of make their lives easier, because the industry is like, I'm sure you guys can imagine that. So my journey is that I studied at WITS, so I started around 2018, and in my second year, I landed my first internship. I was with TAM Gaming. I got the opportunity to see how people wanted to run a gaming studio, and they were not like from a gaming course, so they were coming from different perspectives. And from that opportunity, I saw some of the things that I would like to address in the industry, which led to me registering my own company to try and address those things. A great idea that was. And then 2021, I was doing my third year. I got, my fourth year actually, I got my second internship, and they were rapid prototyping. So that's why I got exposed to rapid prototyping. And at that point, I had some idea of what a TA is, but my experience trying to do things on the spot with the amount of timelines we had and like the different projects, it was just not working. Easy way to burn out if you've ever wondered how to do that. And I've been with Attribute as well, which is the company that I registered. We started making revenue in 2022, and that's what I could fully work through Attribute into client works, and we've done works for like IT Think Gaming or Disputed People, Letty Arts as well. You've probably seen a lot of our tech art in places, so I hope you've enjoyed it where you've seen it. That's my experience, and that's what I'm going to be drawing on to share a lot of the information that I want to share here. So the first thing is, what is a technical artist, right? So what I noticed is that recruiters have a hard time understanding what a TA is. So they ask you for the world, basically. And TAs themselves have a hard time describing themselves, because everything they run into that says I'm looking for TA is listing a whole bunch of extra things they didn't think they should have in their repertoire. And it creates like a holistic problem. But if I was to simplify it, I think there are three main categories in TA, and even maybe I'm putting too big of an umbrella. But I think there's a rendering artist, I think there's a VFX artist, and I think there's an optimization artist. And I think they all do like little bits of different things. I think a rendering artist is more of a solo job sometimes, and they advise more. But I think on the optimization side, you really work close with the programmers, because you do TA for long enough, you realize quite quickly the optimization budget is not for your VFX alone. Like, programmers take shortcuts too, and you need to like distribute some of that out to them. And yeah, I think that there are those categories that we look at to sort of describe it formally. But how I usually describe it is, you are the most generalist of generalists. You are just generalist, the person. You've reached level 99 generalist, tech art. There you go. And then when we look at these tasks that we're asked of, we often find ourselves trying to stretch ourselves really too thin to meet everything that the profile asks us to meet. And we're going to be looking at how we, for ourselves as technical artists, or even if you have some startup owners in the crowd, can look at how they can sort of help TAs get by. And even if you're working either as an artist or a programmer, to understand what they may be dealing with, so that you guys can help them much better in your studios. So the problem that we have in TA is that it's relatively new. You'd think like, maybe 10 years, 12 or 20 years is a long time. But you look at other industries, they've been there for like maybe almost 1,000. They've been doing accounting since dragons were a thing. Dragons were real, right? At some point, I think, yeah. So that's what we're going to be looking at. So in the umbrella, you're going to notice that you really do not have an even playing field. You're being asked of for too many roles at the same time. It is not a straight road. It's a very bumpy and very hard to describe, even for you as a TA yourself. So how do we deal with this? How do you approach it? Well, I think we create road rollers. And we straighten it out for ourselves. What are road rollers though? Because we're not engineers, that much is for sure. So a road roller, I'd like to imagine, is like a package that you make for yourself. And it gets better the more you've worked on a variety of projects because the patterns become so much simpler. Like you can always see that there's a certain pattern to this thing. So you should always take time to create these road rollers that make sure that when you jump onto a project, you pretty much log it in and then start ticking out some of the stuff that they want from you so you can focus most of your energy on some of the stuff that they might be asking you for that you're rusty on because you optimized 6 months ago. You've been doing VFX the whole time. So this is like a general overview of it. When I created it, I used to call it the Super Tech Art suit, and it had like a Superman logo for the package and stuff. But how I've been using it, I think it's something closer to Batman because of how versatile he is.
I'm Batman. You are worthy of the Shaolin. I'm Batman.
You're better than I predicted.
I'm Bat.
He answers everything. He's Batman and it solves most of your problem. So you can think of your road rollers as your utility belt and it's like, explosion VFX, ha, had it, and then you're just like chucking out everything you have. Utility belt runs out sometimes, which is one of the most fun times for me, at least nowadays. I enjoy figuring out new problems, but this has allowed me to take on the workload in a startup that they'd expect from one TA where maybe they should have 4. So I can give you some advice on these. I didn't number them because they're so long, like they get out of the slide and out of control. But we can look at some overviews of these. So you have material reconfiguration tools. So most of the time when a studio needs a TA is because they don't want their characters to look like they all have Vaseline on them, right? I'm sure you guys have seen like the smooth texture, Unity default material characters, and then they just look like they finished the whole Vaseline on their face. Like when CEOs don't want that anymore, they start considering a TA. And what you're going to find yourself doing is you're going to start forming an art style, basically, if they don't have one described, but it is always further away from the default, right? So having a kind of tool where, artists, they like just dragging and dropping their FBX and just letting the material slide all over the engine. So you want something that can identify that process, or at least give them a couple of steps for them to like press through, and it'll take those materials and try to match them to your shader. So what you can find is you're not being called over to tables so much because the one thing doesn't look like the other thing, or it's just bugging out. Your tool sort of gives you more time in a day to do other things since you've automated some part of your progress, and it's common. So maybe you want to look into that. And if any of you guys have been delaying high-level shader language and you're working in Unity specifically, just try it. Even if it takes you like 3 years to get something, I assure you like the first 3 or 4 scripts you make will serve you for a very long time. They're really repetitive patterns. And because they're optimized, you're always getting like, 4 extra frames every time you jump onto a project, And there's also alternative foliage tools. Most games don't use terrain, as far as I've seen, especially in the startup space. And most foliage tools are terrain-based. And the non-terrain-based are quite expensive, so they try to get you to do the foliage tool for them. So you should look into creating foliage tools for your artists. The one that I've created is like a grid pattern. So it works well with square spaces, not so much with circular spaces. If you're trying to place the grass there'll be some spacing. But it really helps cover that ground, especially for level designers. They really move so much faster when they can just sprinkle grass over a prefab or something that wasn't meant to have grass sprinkled over. Foliage is very common. I think that's something you can look at. And then there's a shape and clear tool. I think some of you have made it, even from a non-TA perspective, where you make a build and then you play, and then someone left a capsule in a room because they were testing if damage is taken. So you need like a little tool that clears out everything that is tagged testing. So that's one of the stuff that I've seen from tool creation that really helps. When it comes to effects, commonly, we have explosions, we have highlights. Fire is very common as well. I think water effects as well is something I've underestimated, but I found myself recreating every project that I do. Liquid effects in general as well, I think, is something that you can focus on. Adding laser beams to your package is also great. On some weather effects as well, because it gives you time to optimize these things, whereas if you had to create them live in the environment, more often than not, they're not optimized in that moment, and yeah, rapid prototyping without rapid tools is not a good idea. So some of the stuff that I've looked out for when it comes to rendering art is specifically looking to catch an art style. These are some snippets from some work I did where we were sort of going for the last night replaced 2D pixel art with high volumetrics and reflections type style. Is that you'll usually find someone wants to make a cell shading game, someone wants like a different kind of outlining, but it's still outlining, someone wants to pixelate their 3D game, or someone wants their game to have impacts. Things are bouncing around, especially when they're doing like physics games. They want some reaction of that. So having a ready package or a ready shader code for that could be really handy. Also custom lighting. I think I always underestimate that one a lot as well. Especially when I'm analyzing something, they're saying, well, we're going for this. I often like sometimes overlook the lighting and then I do it later. And it then takes like a boatload of time because it doesn't work. So I think getting your custom lighting packaged as well, especially volumetric in Unity, in Unreal Engine, is super easy. I think that's also handy for you guys to have on board. And I think the cool thing about having these tools is that I've been here listening to talks, listening to Richard and talking to everyone I can, and they tell you to rapidly prototype. And shout out Clockwork Acorn, did make a prototype in like a week, right? And you'd go home and you'd try to do that, but your prototype just looks horrendous. Like that's just not working at this point. It's not a passable kind of horrendous. So in that case, starting to have tools that speed up that process really helps a week's prototype not look like a week's prototype. So I think even for members in the audience who are not TAs, considering some of these things could really help you, especially if you identify the kind of game genres that your team likes making. It's like cozy games and then farm games and then back to cozy and then resource management. Then you start knowing what to expect from them and curating that process so rapid prototyping is easier for you too. The last category that I didn't mention is the ultimate support player, and that's because it is played by all the roles, right? It's the one that sort of asks to stretch you too thin, but it doesn't necessarily do so, especially if you're not then creating too many assets, but you're creating support assets. Some of you guys who have played Overwatch back in its glory days would see that little Brigitte reference there. I think Brigitte is a technical artist because she's a bit of a DPS, like she's just decent enough, but she can heal you and she can protect the whole team at the same time. People say she broke the game, so I don't know if we're gonna break the gaming industry, but I think it would be good to be a mercy as well. Sometimes your programmers are trying to reach for something that might be outside of their programming skill sets, and for those of us who have programming friends, you know that they do not want to think that way. They do not want to say, nah, this is outside of my skill set. They will hard code that whole thing until it chows like, I don't know, 70% of processing just to get that one task done that didn't need programming. I think being a support player for them in being a TA there really helps you and it helps them. And what you usually look for when you talk to them is things that happen during design, which is, hey, we're gonna load this level this way, and when you jump over here, this thing is gonna pop out fast. And you're like, oh, that's gonna throttle, you know? And you know that when the programmer sees the throttle, they're gonna try taking some other shortcuts. And you discuss it with them early on to say, does this need to render immediately? Do we even need a shorter draw distance for some of these things? And it gets some of the stress off them, and they do the other stuff so much better because they're not stressing about some of the stuff that fall on TA. Sometimes you have an artist being told to make an enemy get decapitated when they get hit. And that's not a pure animation job, especially in the games industry. So being able to identify stuff like that is what will make you the ultimate support player, because some of your colleagues themselves don't even identify what falls into TA and what doesn't. The TAs themselves are struggling with that. But if you want to be the ultimate support player, if you want to play that meta, I do suggest that you look out for those kinds of things. And it usually starts with design. I know sometimes as optimization tech artists, you get hired at the end of the process and it's just an impossible job. But if you're included in design, I think that's the best place to identify these things. So the reason why I want the umbrella to be a little less wide and for people to be able to identify that I am much better at rendering art than I am at optimization, or I am much better at VFX creation than I am at the render code, and I don't want to touch any of that. I just want to use particles and Niagara, is that I think it'll be good to set a healthy example as to oncoming TAs. It's still a young role even now. And I think how you guys move in the industry will really inform how it's handled and how other people choose to specialize in the future. So maybe we'll no longer just say, I'm a TA, but we'll say, I'm a TA who specializes in A or B or C. And I think it'll be mentally healthy for everyone to not be called for a job that you know is not TA, but then they said, but TAs can do this in Guatemala, and then, yeah. So. We're all expected to be star platinums and have that AAA stat sheet, and that is not feasible for most people. It's still cool to have a prism or to have an angular stat sheet, even as a TA, because we're used to seeing that in the other roles, but not so much in TA. In fact, as a TA, you feel like if your stat sheet is spread out like that, then you're not getting the job, right? Just looking at the description. But I'd like for you guys in the interim, while we're still working on addressing the stretched issues in the space, to create those tools for yourself so you can cope with all of the work and the demand that they put on you until we can get here one day with everyone else who'd like to be a TA. So my Super Tech Art suit is not complete. My main idea was actually that I'd have it complete at this time, and I'd be giving you guys Unity coupons, and then you guys can redeem it and then get everything I was talking about for free, and then just do whatever you want with it. But I didn't finish it. I didn't finish it because I switched over to Unreal Engine. Long story. But I switched over to Unreal Engine, and I've been working on this game called Ask Me Why. And this is where I saw that it wasn't just the Super Tech Art suit that was carrying me, it was actually a mindset. It was a mindset switch, it wasn't a package creation. Because as soon as I jumped into Unreal Engine, I noticed so many things that I created for myself that I no longer had. And from the get-go, I used this project as a platform to start developing those tools for myself and for my team once again. I'm going to showcase the game now as well. Should be 30 seconds. Then I'll talk over it in a bit. And we'll call it a close. So we looked at Horde survivors and how they usually do not feature 3D movement. So we tried to make it feature 3D movement and render that many 3D enemies on screen space and make visuals clear with that many projectiles going on, which is just a problem of survivors in general. It's been a nice challenge. But you see these white bridges that you walk through, it's actually load screens. So they load the next area for you. And this is so that if we do not create worlds that are open world and gigantic and spacious, we still have a way to prototype in Unreal Engine. It's quite optimized for those bigger world spaces more than the small ones, because it doesn't instance too well. But yeah, we were kind of making sure that we are able to prototype small ideas in Unreal Engine, and we've started creating some of those tools for ourselves too. Yep, that's me and that's my talk. I'm not sure if I have time for questions.